What's up, guys? What's up, guys? It's Charles coming back to you with another video. And today I was going to talk to you guys about one of my favorite heroes slash anti-heroes out there in the comic book world. As you can clearly see, I have my hero that I'm speaking of right here. This is my Spawn Mortal Kombat 11 figure slash statue that I purchased a while back. Spawn's been a character who I've been a huge fan of for quite a while, going back into the early 90s of Spawn issue number 1, who I've tracked on and off again through the past couple of years, just keeping track of what the storylines were and what was going on in the Spawn universe. I actually stopped reading comics for a bit in high school and college, but Spawn was always a character that I knew that if I had the time and money allowed, that I would want to get back into his storyline. So eventually what happened is I got back into him around issue number 300 and have been reading Spawn and some of the other tie-ins ever since. As you guys currently know, Todd McFarlane has branched out with the Spawn universe, and we now have many different Spawn universe characters and series that are related to Spawn, but are branching off into their own directions and into their own storylines with many different characters and many different facets of the Spawn universe still interconnecting. So currently we have Spawn, King Spawn, the Scorched, and Gunslinger Spawn. Out of all of that, I think the main Spawn title is the most engaging and the most fluid in regards to the storylines that we're getting from Mr. McFarlane and from the rest of the creative team. So far, everything seems to be connecting in a very well-connected universe and way. Some of the events that you may read in, say, Gunslinger Spawn are happening concurrently with events that are happening in, say, the Scorched or Spawn itself or in King Spawn. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of crossover. Thankfully enough, Image Comics and Mr. McFarlane and all the other writers themselves seem to be aware of the interconnectivity between all these characters and that things are happening at the same time as other events with other characters. That being said, I just got done reading issue number 330. I love this variant art. I think the cover is great. I have to say that I'm impressed with all the cover art that we've been getting on the Spawn comics since issue 300. As you guys all know, Image Comics, they do a great job with their covers. I have to say, I'm excited to get my hands on the next cover there. I think that looks pretty beast. I hope you guys all agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about the things that are going on in the Spawn universe overall. Issue 330 was very interesting. You have the Forsaken Angel having talked to Redeemer, learning that Cordelia, who's been collecting spawns and has been sending them out into the world to kind of counteract the actions that Al Simmons has been doing out in the world, i.e., opening up the time portal slash rip and tear through time and space that he caused back in issue 300. And what Redeemer in the previous issues told the Forsaken was, look, like, you are a failed experiment of God. You aren't going to be getting back into heaven because all the other angels and all the other redeemers, we all know that you're a failure. Like, we all know God doesn't want you back. So whatever Cordelia told you, like, you are not getting back into heaven, and you need to accept that that's the reason why you were called the Forsaken. You were forsaken out of that world. God doesn't want you back. Hell's not going to take you. You're trapped on Earth just with the rest of us. And Cordelia, whatever she told you about getting your chances about getting back in is an absolute lie. And when the Forsaken heard this, he went off. He was just like, okay, I've been lied to. Cordelia's been lying to me. Fuck this bitch. I'm going to go rip and tear. he flies off, and Spawn, Al Simmons, is like, "Hey, Redeemer, go follow him. Find out what's going on. Let me know where he went, and I'll come back you up as soon as you know what's going on." So issue 330 here picks up with the Forsaken going into the facility, and I believe it's like out in the Midwest or something. And Forsaken lands. He just starts ripping into everybody and is like, "Hey, where's Cordelia? I want to kill this wrench, and I want to get my hands on her as quickly as possible." Redeemer shows up as well, and he starts going through the facility, and he says that Cordelia and her agency are doing a scorched earth policy. They're trying to destroy everything that they've collected over time. All the creatures, all the other extra spawns, anything else that could tie them into what they were doing. When Spawn shows up, he talks to Redeemer, and he's like, "Look, I'm going to go find the Forsaken, see if I can smack some sense into him." Spawn eventually does run into the Forsaken, and they engage in some pretty brutal heavy combat. And Spawn kind of starts realizing, hey, what I'm fighting here is really like God's answer to the Spawn. Like this Forsaken is kind of the anti-Spawn to what I am. So Spawn, noticing that he may be outnumbered and outpowered here, goes, "All right, I'm going to crack some dents into this guy's armor and make him focus on containing his power while at the same time, fighting me." He's going to have to choose. Do I keep fighting Spawn, or, do I expand and, just overextend myself with my power to the point where I might not be able to beat Spawn? And the Forsaken realizes this. He's like, "All right, my armor's been broken. I'm bleeding out energy. I need to get out of here." It's like, I don't have the time nor the energy to take on Spawn at this point. So Forsaken leaves, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he actually not only leaves, but he goes underground. Like at the end of this issue, it's said that they don't know where the Forsaken is at the moment, which is kind of interesting. So we should be looking for the Forsaken to show back up at some point. Going forward, I'm going to be continuing to refer to him as Forsaken. I know a lot of people are referring to him as the Black Angel. That's pretty accurate. He is in the black armor and everything. But that's not the only other interesting thing that we learn in this issue. What I think Mr. McFarlane and the writers, Roy McConville, Carlo and Barberi, are leaning towards, the artists and the story writers and everything. What I think they're leaning towards or going towards is all-out war with Al Simmons. And Al seems to know this. But what he doesn't know is what we learn at the end of this issue. And that's when Terry Fitzgerald pretty much goes to Al and says, "Hey, look, I did some digging on the files that you found in Cordelia's laboratory here, and you only found cells for like 4 other spawns. That's fine, but there's more than 4 signals out there. There's more than just you and Gunslinger and Medieval and She-Spawn running around as spawns. There's other spawns out there. Cordelia was trying to collect all of them. We know this, but what's going on with the other ones she wasn't able to find? Like, their signals are disappearing. Why? Like, someone is draining these signals and these spawns' powers off the map. And who that person is, we find out, is Sin. Sin's back. Sin's going around and he's draining all these other spawns. And he's draining them of their necroplasm, and I guess he's storing it in his suit. The final image here, I don't want to spoil it, but the final image is intense, and it gives you an idea of what Sin is doing and what he's capable of. If you guys have not read issue 330, I won't spoil what you see in this, but suffice to say, if you know that if you guys have been following since issue 325 and 326, Sin's back, You know he has a new suit of armor, and you know that he's draining the other spawns. What that means going forward is that Sin, out of all the people who are vying for control and power of the throne of hell, is if he gathers enough energy and enough necroplasm, I think he could be a threat that Al Simmons as Spawn has yet to ever face. And I think that's going to be a confrontation that's going to cross over into the other series and comics that we have. I could see this being like one of the first major crossover events for Image Comics and Spawn in general with the Spawn universe. I think that would be very cool to see. If it's like the War of Sin or something like that, I think that would be a wonderful title. Mr. McFarlane, if you watch this video, or if anybody wants to refer that over to Mr. McFarlane, that'd be great. But the War of Sin would be pretty cool. So one of the other things I wanted to talk to you guys about with Spawn in general is that there's so much other stuff going on, tiny little tidbits of conspiracy and backstabbing and plotting that seems to be going on at the moment that I think is important to talk about. So number one is, if you guys are reading Spawn, you have to remember as well what is being told to us in the other series. First off, in the Scorched and in King Spawn, we have to realize that Jim Downing is back as well. Now, if you guys don't know who Jim Downing is, Jim Downing was the individual who took the place of Spawn when Al Simmons pretty much tried to off himself and failed. And Al was kind of like in this state of limbo, purgatory, what have you. But he was around, and he was like, I'm not coming back just yet. I have things to set up. And Jim Downing was like, okay, well, I guess I'm running around this Spawn. The crazy thing about that was that Jim Downing was the blonde-haired man that whenever Spawn tried to turn himself into a normal human, he would turn himself into Jim Downing. Now, I'm going back through the issues, and I'm trying to understand how that all connected, so I'm not very familiar with it. But suffice to say, Jim Downing's back, and he has the powers of a Spawn, but he's just not like, he doesn't seem to have the symbiote. He just has Spawn's powers. He has like the power of necroplasm. He can possess other people. He can heal people. He can bring people back from the dead. Apparently, he brought back Overkill. So Jim Downing is out there, and he's also talking to Mark. And Mark, who we know is Medieval Spawn. And that's a big piece of the puzzle here is, is Jim Downing just basically going, I'm going to form my own army to counteract what Al Simmons is doing. Now, this is important because if you go from King Spawn and Spawn into the Scorched, the most recent issue of the Scorched has said that through the Redeemer, that there is a traitor within the mist of all of these different people and filings and all the other followers of Al Simmons, that there is a traitor. I think immediately that the traitor is going to be Mark / Medieval Spawn. Now, the reason I say this is because of his relationship to Jim Downing. We already know that Mark has signed on to help Jim Downing because of how Mark feels about Al. Mark's kind of feeling as if Al is out there and that he's become way too powerful. Mark is like, all right, we need like some kind of way to check Al Simmons. And by I mean check, like rein him in. If he goes too far over the deep end, and he gets so consumed with power that we'll be there to stop him and remind him of what he is that he's fighting for. I don't think either Jim or Mark want to kill Al necessarily. I just think they want to be able to rein him in. Now, that's a heavy toll and a heavy thing to do. I don't know if Medieval Spawn, Mark, Overkill, and Haunt are powerful enough to overtake Al, but if you throw in She-Spawn and Gunslinger, they may stand a chance. But it's yet to be determined as to where Gunslinger and She-Spawn currently fall in their allegiances. Jessica Priest / She-Spawn kind of seems to still be loyal to Al, and I think Gunslinger is still loyal to Al up until a point. Gunslinger has his own agenda. Gunslinger at this point, if you're reading Gunslinger, his solo series, you know he is desperate and determined to get back to his own time. So he's going to stick around and do whatever he can. He knows Al is the one that opened the portal in the first place that brought Gunslinger to this current time. So in his mind, I'm thinking that Gunslinger is like, all right, the only way I'm going to get back is if I stick close to Al Simmons. He's powerful enough to open up a portal and send me back. That's all well and good, but I think one of the final crazy pieces of this puzzle is what's going to happen first. Is Al going to send these guys all back, or is Al going to open up the dead zones first and then send all these guys back? It's a very interesting puzzle because obviously, if you've been reading the comics again, you know that that's the big thing that everybody is going for. They all want the dead zones reopened. They all want to be able to leave Earth and come back at will and or on their own whim. So that's why everybody's vying for control over Al. But Al Simmons never takes threats or bribery or any kind of interference on his own agenda too well. Al Simmons is the kind of character that if you come after him and you tell him, hey, this is the way things are going to be, you're going to listen to me, Al Simmons just takes that shit and throws it right back in your face and says, fuck you, I'm going to continue to do what I want to do, and if you don't like the way I do things, then get the fuck out. And at this point in time, Al Simmons is also very hesitant to trust anybody. His trust only goes so far, and out of everyone that he's been engaged with, I think the only person he currently trusts is Terry Fitzgerald, because Terry's been there. Like he knows Terry's in this just for the same reason that Al is, and that, of course, is to get Wanda Blake back. And in the last issue of Kingspawn, it's been suggested through Gaia that yes, you give up your anger, you take the throne, Al Simmons, you will get Wanda back. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think they're playing him. I think everybody's trying to play Al, and Al is just figuring out at this point, okay, what are the cards? Who's all sitting at the table? Think of it as like a high-stakes poker game. Al Simmons has his hand, and he's seen the flop, but he hasn't seen the turn, and he hasn't seen the final card. But he knows who the other players are, and he's just trying to determine who else is at this table who may have a higher hand than I do. And it's interesting because at the same time, you have to realize that there's other people out there that are starting to gather their own forces to challenge Al. Now, Gunslinger knows that, hey, the clown is back. Violator is out there. I have yet to see an issue of Gunslinger or Spawn or Kingspawn where Gunslinger tells Al that Clown is back. But considering what Gunslinger did to the Clown after he was engaged by Clown to betray Al, so that Al would then be forced to open up the dead zones. Gunslinger was basically saying to Violator and the Clown that, hey, I can control you or other creatures. Why would I need you? I'm just going to go back to Al Simmons and work with him. So that's where we currently are, circa issue 330 of Spawn. I'm very excited to see where this is going. I have to say that I'm very impressed with the amount of issues that the whole Image team and the whole writers team over at Spawn and King Spawn and Gunslinger and the Scorched have been able to push out so far. It's actually been pretty remarkable how accurate and on time they have been in regards to their releases. They've done a fantastic job of keeping pace with each other. I'm hoping that this continues into the end of the year. And we're at issue 330. That's only 20 more issues until issue 350. I'm excited to see where Mr. McFarlane is going to take this, guys. So, again, I'm thinking I'm probably going to do a follow-up video with issue 331 once that drops. I know that King Spawn is getting up there, close to issue 310. Gunslinger Spawn is getting close to issue 10. So I might do some further up reviews of those, just to do like a general lore update on Spawn and see how things are going. And if you guys have any of your own theories about where we are going to be going next in the Spawn universe, I would love to hear it. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.